TPR, mediation, relinquishment, trial, what's it all mean? Let's talk all things court. Hello, foster care and adoption friends. This channel is called Lauren Fosters, where we talk all things foster care and adoption, and today specifically we're in video 2 of a 3-part series where we talk about all things court related, and today we're going to focus all about trial, terminating parental rights, mediation, kind of the end point of that life cycle of court dates you would see all throughout the life of a case. That end point, let's talk all about that. So if you haven't checked out my previous video, I will link it up above, but I definitely suggest you check it out because it will explain all the hearings and all the court stuff leading up to this point. The stuff we're going to talk about in this video is really after the point where the case has kind of seen its cycle. It's had its life cycle, and they're kind of looking at things like mediation, potential relinquishment, terminating parental rights. So let's get into that discussion. So we've gone through the reunification permanency goal, which was probably for most of the time the case was going on, either that was the main goal or the only goal of the case. You may have even dabbled or talked about guardianship at some point. Now we've gotten to the point where either parents are going to sign over their own rights or they're going to attempt to terminate them in a trial. Parents do have the right to relinquish their own rights. And what I mean by that is parents do have the right to sign over their own rights. I've seen it happen outside of a mediation where a parent has gone to hearing, they've been warned that right around the corner is terminating parental rights trial, the TPR trial, and the parent has just decided to go ahead on their own accord and sign over rights right then and there. But I've also seen it where the judge has ordered a termination of parental rights trial and then also ordered something in conjunction with it called a mediation that is going to happen before the trial even happens. And oftentimes in that mediation, everybody's kind of brought around the table and they discuss, like, what can we do to not even have to go to trial? Like, what can we do? What can we all agree on here? And I won't get too much into the ins and outs of mediation. That may be very specific to your area, especially from a legal standpoint. But I will say that parents do have the ability to relinquish their own rights at that mediation table. So if parents relinquish their own rights, it's kind of done. It's a done deal. There's no more to the process. There won't be a trial. They will not be allowed to appeal, most likely. And I will get into appeals in just a moment. So let's put that off to the side for just a moment. But if parents do not relinquish their own rights, sign over their own rights, they will move forward with a terminating parental rights trial. During the trial, it wouldn't be that uncommon for you to, as the foster parent, to be subpoenaed, to actually be questioned. So if you have gone through the whole life cycle of your case, don't be surprised if during the trial you actually are asked to take the stand. It doesn't always happen, so don't let that stress you out, but there is some potential there. Also, if your child's particular case is very complicated or has been up to this point and they haven't called a lot of witnesses up to this point, it wouldn't be uncommon for them to start calling them for trial. So those teachers, therapists, or anybody else that's very involved in your children's lives, that's not a given. There's no guarantee that they're gonna call witnesses or call you to the stand. Usually they'll let you know ahead of time if that's going to be the case. So let's say the TPR is granted, so they do terminate parental rights. Did you know that parents have the ability to appeal the decision? It may be up to the laws in your particular area, which I know I say all the time, but this is no different on whether that means those parents will have to pay out of pocket for a lawyer or whether the state will provide one. There's also several levels of appeals. I won't pretend to know a ton about it, but usually there's a time period from when that TPR happened, when that terminating of parental rights happened, to the time a parent is allowed to appeal. Once they've gone past that time frame, they won't be allowed to appeal the decision any longer. But if they do it within that window, then it kind of sets another clock off, this lifespan of this appeals case, as to whether or not that decision is going to be reversed or not. It doesn't always happen. We unfortunately have seen it happen before, and it can be a little bit rough. But like with everything else, you do have to let the legal process do what it does and just hope that the outcome works in the best interest of the children. You shouldn't have to pay for your own lawyer to be at trial. If you have been a party to the case at some point before trial, likely you'll have your own lawyer at trial. But like I mentioned, actually in my last video, you do not need a lawyer at this point. CPS will likely have their own lawyer, potentially some other parties involved will call witnesses to the stand and do all those kind of things that your lawyer would do for you. So the only point of having a lawyer as a foster parent would be the ability to call witnesses to the stand and to cross-examine, and a lot of that's going to be done without you having a lawyer there. So unless you've been a party to the case before this, you won't need a lawyer for trial either. There is a waiting period post terminating parental rights to when a family is allowed to adopt. In one state we've been in, it was 45 days. In one state that we've been in, it was 3 months. But let's say the child has not been with you for a significant amount of time before the TPR happened. There may be even an extended waited period of time. I know one of the states we were in, the child would have had to be with you for 6 months minimum before they would even allow something like that. So even though in that state it might only be 3 months post TPR where you could adopt, and a family that maybe has just gotten this placement would have to wait the entire 6 months to be able to adopt. So as with everything else, your waiting period will depend on your particular location. I mentioned this in the first video. Sometimes there's misconceptions about court. Every single time we've gone to trial, I immediately get asked by friends and family, so did you get to adopt? And that is not what the termination of parental rights trial is for. You will likely not walk out of there as an adoptive parent. There's also a permanency goal of guardianship if you are a kinship home, and you may get to that point of guardianship before you even head to trial. So, and what I mean by that is you may not even have a trial. So if parents have not relinquished rights, your kinship home, they may not go to trial. They may ask if you are willing to take guardianship instead. Because the rules of guardianship could vary so much case by case and area by area, I won't say too much about it, although I will say parents will maintain their rights. It doesn't necessarily mean they somehow get visits, but it could. It doesn't necessarily mean that somehow they have access to medical or school records, but they could. It just might be something you have to ask about for your particular area and your particular case. I know the one time we were asked to take guardianship, there were some potential limitations on our ability to move, and even though it probably would have been totally fine, as a military family, that was just completely something we could not agree to. Thankfully today, those same boys are adopted, but guardianship was just not going to be an option for us. But sometimes guardianship really is the best ends to a means, and it's a good option for certain families. Either sometime before trial or sometime after, a couple of things are going to happen. One is you're going to be asked to view and possibly sign off that you have viewed your child's file. This file should have every ounce of information that has ever been disclosed throughout the entire case, and that includes medical records. That might include psychiatric evaluations, case details that you maybe haven't even heard yet. But they want you to read it in case any of it is going to stand in the way of you wanting to adopt once they terminate those rights. Chances are your particular area, because it happens in most areas, will not allow you to take pictures or make any copies of it. So everything you read in that moment is going to be all the information you get. So hopefully you've got a really good memory. Another thing that may happen either right before or right after that termination of parental rights trial is subsidy negotiations or conversations about subsidy in the future. Things that might affect that conversation could be the state you're living in, could be the number of children you're taking, could be the age of the children you're taking. It could be a whole number of things that determine that particular subsidy negotiation, but that conversation will either happen right before that TPR trial or it will happen right after. This is video 2 out of a 3-part video series about all things court related. So while this video more pinpoints what happens, like we've gone through the whole lifespan of this case, we've done all the hearings, we've done all the things, and now they're talking about either parents wanting to relinquish rights or moving towards a TPR trial and everything you can expect with that. The next video we'll talk a bit more about that waiting period up towards adoption and what to expect around adoption time if your family chooses to take that route. If you haven't checked out the first video, please check it out. It does explain a little more in depth the court process up to this point. Hopefully that was all helpful information. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, please check out below, like, subscribe, and I will see you next time. All right, bye-bye.